Hello and welcome to the Cradle News Roundup, your one-stop shop for all news West Asia. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I am the head of news for the Cradle. As usual, I'm joined by my colleagues, content creator and writer for the Cradle, Karim Shami, and U.S. investigative journalist, William Wagner. So today, guys, I want us to take off from where we left off yesterday, and that is discussing how U.S. propaganda shapes the discourse in the U.S. and in this region. So let's bring it back to the attack on the U.S. bases in Syria and Jordan, because one interesting tidbit of information that I saw being reported was that this attack happened because it was a drone. It was a drone strike. They're saying it was an Iranian Shahed drone provided to the Iraqis by Iran. What I saw was that apparently this attack took place just as an American drone was landing at Al-Tanef, was returning from one of its many missions. And so this, maybe some people will say, well, it was a coincidence. And I don't think there's coincidences in war, especially when we are seeing the level of sophistication from a strategic level that the resistance axis has shown over the past, 3+ months. So just like picture that for a second. They knew that a U.S. drone was coming back to Al-Tanef, and they timed it so that their drone would cause confusion in the radar, and maybe air defenses don't activate, and they hit the base. They kill 3 U.S. soldiers at least, and then they injure 40 more. And then on top of this, just to this idea of how these attacks are being conducted, we're also seeing it at the Lebanese border in the way that Hezbollah has been so capable of hitting Iron Dome batteries directly, of taking out the most strategic base in Mount Meron in northern Israel, which essentially, their intelligence from this base reaches all the way up to Greece. They took it out, and then we're seeing it in Yemen. The Yemenis, these, in the Western media, they like to describe them as these ragtag militia, the goat herders in their little, horse-drawn carriages with the missiles in the back. That's how they're portrayed. The commander of the U.S. Fifth Fleet, Bradford Cooper, he said over the past few days that the Yemenis can launch attacks on U.S. ships within 75 seconds. It takes them 75 seconds from launching either a drone or a missile to hit the U.S. Ships or the commercial vessels that they have been targeting. And okay, this is the goat herders doing this. The Washington Post had this article a few days ago, essentially saying the Yemenis they perfected irregular warfare. When the U.S. planes, the U.S. and U.K. planes, they take off from the aircraft carrier that costs tens of billions of dollars, and they drop these bombs that also cost millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands in the very least. And they say we took out a dozen Yemeni launch sites. In reality, they're hitting empty fields.
I think they also know that they are hitting empty fields because Yemen is like the last link in the axis of resistance. So we had Iran, we had the Iraqi resistance, we had the Syrian army, and we had Hezbollah. And after all that came the Yemenis, which they popped into power in at the end of 2014. So they know how to store their weapons. They know how the enemy attacks.
They've been fighting an irregular war for the past 9 years.
They were fighting a war, of course, with Saudi Arabia, which was backed by the U.S., and they didn't hide this. They also rented satellites, the U.S. satellites and logistics and everything. So what the Saudi Arabians were doing is the same what the U.S. is doing now, because they already tried to take them on. And also the Saudis, the first year they said that we destroyed 90% of the Yemenis' capability, and then Mohammed bin Salman, which wasn't, I think,
was the defense minister.
He was the defense minister. Now he resigned and brought his brother. So he said that the Houthis or the Al-Sarraj, they are nothing. We can destroy them in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks.
It's 2 weeks. Now it's 9 years, and now they are attacking the USA. So as I say, these are like Godzilla. The more you hit them, they can.
This is exactly my point.
So exactly that's what's happening now. Of course, I think that the Yemenis, they have the precision, because we saw from the satellite imagery back in 2019 and 2020, they had crucial sites in Saudi Arabia, and especially what happened 2 years ago when Saudi Arabia, they were very happy to
when they were hosting the F1.
well,
right?
yeah, when they were hosting the F1, and we saw everything is burning behind them. So, and the site that they struck was like 1,000 meters away from Crimea. It's not something close.
So yes, Karim, exactly. This is the point I'm trying to make, is that the Yemenis, they're fighting in completely different terms than the U.S. is fighting. They, the rockets, the missiles, or the drones that they launch, they are not expensive. They don't cost that much. They cost a few $1,000s. They say that, according to U.S. intelligence, that they're using commercial radars, that they're just retrofitted to find where the ships are. And, that's how they've been able to be so precise. But then the U.S., they don't know how to fight this war. And at this point, what is the thinking in the White House, They've already been, had their assets handed to him in Vietnam, in Afghanistan. Now it's happening in Yemen. But then they keep, just dropping money on these projects that cost hundreds of billions of dollars. And to counter what? The goat herders?
Well, I guess the main thing to remember about the U.S. is that the United States doesn't fight wars to win wars. The United States fights wars to fight wars. As long as there's a war going on and money is being spent, that means money is being made. So Julian Assange had that important insight that the whole purpose of the U.S. war machine is just to launder money from the U.S. tax base to private corporations, weapons manufacturers, etc. In fact, a lot of the support for Ukraine and Israel is exactly for that purpose. A lot of the money doesn't even leave, the aid that goes to Ukraine or that goes to Israel doesn't even leave Washington. It just goes from one bank account, the Treasury, from the U.S. government's bank account to the accounts of the weapons manufacturers. And I know a lot of the leaders and the military in Israel, they probably make a lot of money off of, corruption and things like that. If they're getting all these billions of dollars of aid and all these weapons deals and things, for sure the generals and politicians in Israel are taking a cut and making money. So that's why when the U.S. withdrew from Afghanistan, it was kind of portrayed as this big blunder and things like that, and that the war was like a big blunder. But actually the war, from the U.S. perspective, the people who wanted to fight the war, it was a huge success. That was 20 years. They were just in there blowing shit up and killing people and spending money. That is the whole purpose. So, strangely, again, what's happening in Yemen, to be honest, I don't think the people in power in the United States see it as a bad thing. They see it as a way to spend money, to pass, more aid packages, to escalate things. It's just, that's what the United States is all about, is fighting wars, again, not to win, but to make money.
So when they said that the Russian army is weak and the Ukrainians would win, and they put all this propaganda, and whatever happens to the Russian army, all the media covers it. And this also portrays that the U.S. is the untouchable country. And many U.S. citizens, they feel that. They feel they are like the gods of the world. I think when, if Ansarullah retaliates, for instance, and sinks a U.S. Navy ship, the impact of this on the U.S. citizens and the government and the army will be times 10 compared to other armies, because they always say nobody can touch us. We are the strongest. We are the police of the world. And then you see the rebels, because they portrayed them as rebels, sinks a ship. This will be huge. It will affect them emotionally, materially, and I think also it will affect the U.S. Army stocks, because we see their stocks goes up and down every now and then, and especially that, for instance, when they went to Iraq, they made this propaganda that Iraq is the fourth strongest country in the world, and because they prepared the mentality of the public, if Saddam Hussein downs a plane or bomb us, okay, we are fighting a strong army, you know what I mean? But now if they go to Yemen, which everybody knows that it's a poor country, and they are saying that these are people of standards, and if they sink a ship, this will be huge for the American government and army and even the American.
But then the question really becomes, because I think, Will, you hit it right on the head. You said it. They fight wars not to win wars, but to make money. And that's it. That's in a nutshell what it is. But then there's a human cost to it. And there was a big uproar over 3 U.S. soldiers were killed. Like, you know, you have all of these, you have Lindsey Graham, you know, at the top of his lungs, bomb Iran. And you have these other, you know, like just all the war hawks.
Yeah, they say bomb Iran even though there's nothing.
Exactly. It's always from Iran. It's always from Iran. But so my point is, right now, the U.S. Army is seeing a very significant recruitment crisis. They are falling behind by the tens of thousands. On top of that, so it's even a very small percentage of the U.S. population that is even qualified to be in the Army, to the point that last year, the armed forces, they had to change their like recruitment protocol to include people that would be considered overweight. And among other changes, you know. And then on top of that is the fact that most young U.S. citizens do not want to join the Army. They do not consider it a viable option, you know. Before it could be like, oh, we'll pay for college for you, you know, you just have to serve 2 years, blah, blah, blah. But now we know for a fact, and they know for a fact, that these wars see no end, that these wars just continue, and you're going to be continuing to be deployed. And just for an example, you know, right now, one of the ships that is near the Red Sea, the USS Bataan, it was deployed in August to counter Iran in the Persian Gulf. Because, you know, Iran was, back then it was Iran that was threatening commercial shipping lanes. It wasn't Yemen. And then when you know, October 7th happened and everything started to fall apart, they transferred the ship to the Mediterranean. And now this ship, there's like 2,000 Marines as part of this expeditionary group. Their deployment term is ending. And the question is, are they going to extend it? And then now, you know, a few weeks ago, there was this news, local U.S. news in New Jersey saying 1,500 reserve troops National Guard members are going to be deployed to Iraq and Syria. And then you have, you know, the number of troops you said are present right now across the region. And it's just, how do they justify this? How do they justify, you know, sending all of these young people to die? Because just look at Gaza, you know, 80% of the tunnels are still intact.
Yeah, I think it's so simple. You know, they are defending democracy. That's it. They say we are.
You just
Yeah,
proved me wrong with everything.
Well, I guess we can wrap it up now.
Never mind. I take back what I said.
No, because, you know, on top of this, on top of everything that is happening, the White House is still saying we want restraint. Oh, we don't want this to spiral out of control. We want restraint. Oh, we want the Israelis to stop killing civilians, but here's more bombs. And we want, you know, we don't want war with Iran, but we keep funding these or training these groups that in the end conduct terror attacks in Iran. So it's you know, the right hand doing something and then the left hand doing the complete opposite. And that's just kind of like the tale of U.S. foreign policy, isn't it?
yeah, it is. Look, as he said that war, when there is war, everybody is happy in the United States, especially
The shareholders are happy.
the shareholders are happy, and even the citizens, because you see from the comments, they really defend their army. They love their army.
Very patriotic, yes.
Very patriotic.
And very jingoistic, very,
Yeah.
you know, like the army is...
Yeah, 100%, but because they believe that we are the good guys, and we are fighting for democracy. And of course, there's some Zionists that understand everything is what's happening. But I think the normal U.S. citizen see that his country is a good country, and it's like on the right side, and we are there to help these poor countries to establish democracy. We make a new tiny USA in the Middle East, and this stuff. That's how I see it. And so, but the new generation, especially they name it the TikTok generation, they are seeing more truth, okay? And they are saying, and especially what happened, like a phenomenon, what happened that Bin Laden letter
The Bin Laden letter, yeah.
became viral, and everybody, this guy, although we don't support him or support his thoughts, but this guy talked about Palestine, what's happening in the Middle East in 2001, and this letter, and now everything is like happening again. So people are somehow waking up.
And the other thing to point out is, on one hand, like Al-Qaeda is basically a creation of the United States, and there's received U.S. support in Afghanistan, in Bosnia, in Syria, in Iraq, in many, many places. So to point out that bin Laden wasn't necessarily like opposed to the United States, like the Al-Qaeda is a U.S. project, a U.S. and Israeli project. We need to keep that in mind. But secondly, I don't know, a lot of people in the United States, they're not really that anxious to go to war. Like, that's why the propaganda has to be so good. The propaganda about, like, you know, what Hamas did on October 7th, for example, has to be like, they have to lie nonstop through their teeth that Hamas raped these people, they beheaded these babies. They have to make up crazy things. Every war that the United States has gotten involved in, there's always been a major lie behind it because the populace isn't really dying to go to war. They have to be tricked into it. And so, like, you see that, for example, in 2013 in Syria with the Ghouta chemical attacks. As we know, a coalition of intelligence agencies, U.S., Israeli, Saudi, Jordanian, French, British, they all collaborated to do this fake chemical attack in Syria in 2013. And the whole idea was to induce the U.S. to start bombing and basically invade on behalf of the Al-Qaeda rebels that they were supporting from Jordan, as I mentioned earlier. And Obama backed away, even though there was a ton of pressure within Washington for him to, like, go to war. He realized, man, if this goes poorly, like, I'm going to be in bad shape. I better get, like, the Congress behind me so I have, like, some cover. And there was no support in Congress. There was no support among Americans in general. And so I think normally it's the case that Americans are about, like, you know, people in other countries. They just want to do their thing, you know, go to work, have their kids. But when there's this crazy propaganda, like, oh, these terrorists, and they did this, and the da-da-da-da-da,
And the fact that
then it's easy to convince them, like, oh, well, yeah, I guess these people are evil, and yeah, we are good, we're democracy. I mean, that's
World War II.
World War II, yeah, everyone thinks, like, oh, yeah, we're, like, fighting the Nazis constantly. So people are people around the world, you know what I mean? But that's why the propaganda is so important, is because these regular people in the U.S. have to be convinced to go to war, because, again, that's the way to, like, loot the U.S. Treasury and send that money to the weapons manufacturers or send it to the Israelis.
and now we see that they are saying if we don't destroy them there in their land, they will come to us.
Always.
You know, how can a Yemeni cross all these thousands of kilometers and land in the U.S. and
I think we will see if a real major war breaks out in the wider West Asia region and the United States starts seeing soldiers getting killed, like happened in Jordan. I think Americans are going to be pretty quick to be like, hey,
We need to stand by.
we just need to withdraw, actually. We need to get out of there. Like, why do we need to do that? Like, remember Lebanon in 1982, there's the bombing of the Marine barracks where 82 Marines, I think, were killed. And the U.S. just said, okay, let's get out of here. So I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not trying to say Americans are like peace-loving people, like, or anything like that. But they're just regular people. So if the casualties really start hitting in the U.S., people will start saying, like, hey, why are we here? And especially if Trump gets elected, to be honest, he has these isolationist tendencies, whatever you think of Trump. And it's always kind of the U.S. national security bureaucracy and the deep state, so to speak, that was pushing him to, like, keep troops in Syria, potentially, start new wars, bomb Iran, all these different things. And if Trump can get elected, that's a huge if, that could even accelerate kind of more of an isolationist tendency within the U.S., and that could be a really good thing.
But maybe he just wants to launder money, some other way, not through the weapons companies. But to your point, Will, about the propaganda, I just want to read you an excerpt from a quote from our good friend Amos Hochstein, the U.S. Special Envoy to the region. I don't know his title. His title is like 10 words long. So he says about what's happening in the Red Sea. The first thing to remember, we are responding to the Houthi attacks. And this is not an attack on the United States or related to Gaza. This is an attack on the global commercial system, on global shipping lanes. This is not just about the United States, and that's why the reaction has not just been the U.S. Who, besides the U.S., and the U.K., to a much lesser extent, let's be honest, has even been responding to this? Like he's trying to portray it as like, the coalition of the willing, the Operation Prosperity Guardian.
Europeans are not having it, yeah.
Yeah, most of the U.S. NATO partners, they said, thanks, but not thanks. We don't want anything to do with this. The Gulf partners, same thing. The Seychelles was very excited about this, The Seychelles were like, yeah, we'll help you check the radars every couple of days and tell you what's happening. But this is what is being said day and night in U.S. media. This is not just us doing this. This is not about Gaza. This is, the terrorists, the rebels, the people that want to come and take your children and, behead them like they did with the Israeli children. And I honestly feel like the script has run out.
Yeah. How many Americans are going to be dying to go to war for global shipping lanes? After 9/11, they saw this big traumatic thing. All these people died, and they kind of turned their brains off and became very jingoistic at that time. But like, if it's all about like shipping lanes, like
no, and then like sorry, Karim, before you say, just because the U.S. shipping is concentrated in the Pacific. Most of the U.S. shipping is in the Pacific because the U.S. is over there.
Well, and that's another thing, is that the U.S. may not be that opposed to even the shipping getting shut down in the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, because, we get all of our stuff from Asia across the Pacific, and especially if, say, the energy corridor through the Red Sea gets shut down, West Asian oil from the Gulf is having difficulty reaching Europe, especially natural gas. All that's going to do is make it easier for the U.S. to sell more natural gas, liquid natural gas to Europe. So,
and now we're seeing that with
that's
Texas.
the thing to think about, is that Biden may not even be that worried that, the Red Sea gets like shut down to a large degree. That's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention that they already used the propaganda against Putin, and many people were willing to fight in Ukraine against Russia. And this happened short time ago. So I don't think they can redo the propaganda, how many people they can recruit again. So because they already tried everything, and people that were interested in Russia, in the war between Russia and Ukraine, after like couple or 3 months, they said that this war is bullshit. So imagine what would they say if they go to war with Yemen.
Yeah, planting flags, in the destroyed university, the destroyed hospital, the nurseries, like it's.
And what I want to say is that the U.S. citizen is fed propaganda against Russia more than is fed propaganda against Yemen. You know what I mean? And they already tried to recruit them or to like gain their support against against Russia and Ukraine. And the result is not what I don't think the result is what they want to see, because the average U.S. citizen is saying that stop the war in Russia and Ukraine is losing and we're paying money.
Exactly. So I think, this altogether, what this really means is that the veil is falling, the curtain is dropping, the emperor is naked, and more people are realizing it. And that's why it's so important for you to support spaces like the Cradle. So please give us a like, give us a follow on X, on Instagram. If you're feeling generous, donate to our Patreon, and you can find us here next week for the Cradle News Roundup. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I have been joined by my colleagues Karim Shami and William Van Wagenen. We'll see you next week.